At 6, my sister Ronnie became a victim of a devastating degenerative disease called Friedreich's ataxia. Despite her debilitating illness, she earned 2 degrees, wrote and published 2 books, raised a great family, and worked for the BC Coalition of the Disabled. Last November, faced with the solemn realization that she could no longer do any of the simplest things that gave her dignity and joy, my sister decided to take her own life. However, her attempt proved unsuccessful. Now she lies, filled with despair, alone in a darkened room. She is paralyzed, blind, legally deaf, virtually unable to speak, and in constant excruciating pain. Ronnie's situation is desperate. She prays for a legal means to end her torment, as well as for all those others like her who live in hopelessness.
I watched my father die from ALS. He was 64, and he had a plan in place. He was definitely planning to have a morphine cocktail, as far as I know. I don't know if he would have been able to do it himself. I think he was looking for somebody to help him with that process that could, I think because the fear of death was still there for him. He unfortunately died in the hospital with pneumonia, so he didn't need to go through that process. Anybody that is terminal should have the right to die with dignity.
I had to sit and watch my mother be eaten from the inside out with bowel cancer. In keeping with her wishes, she was at home and as comfortable as the drugs and the caregivers could make her. That said, the indignities she suffered, particularly in her last week of life, were heartbreaking. My mother had a very deep sense of faith and made her choice to die naturally. I guess for me it poses the question, if at the end stages of life we have a choice to live, then why shouldn't we have the choice to die?
My mother had a mild stroke in a Canadian care facility. The relative with power of attorney, along with a doctor who had never seen my mother before, decided she would have morphine only, although she was conscious, trying to speak, and indicating she wanted water. After 6 days without food or water, she died. As evidenced by my mother's story, we already have abuse of authority by some doctors to take away patient choice. Legalizing assisted suicide will give them even more power.
I've had MS, multiple sclerosis, for 30 years. I went from being completely able-bodied, athletic, to being wheelchair dependent as I am today. It's been a long, tough journey. My heartache was so deep, my sorrow was so profound that had I not been surrounded by people who loved me, I think I might have been open to suicide. If I had chosen suicide, it would not have affected just me. It never does. It would affect my wife, my children, my grandchildren. It would affect my community. It would affect my doctor, because I would ask her to stop being a healer and start being an executioner. And in a small way, it would affect my society by helping to entrench the notion that there is such a thing as a life that is unworth living.
I'm 48. They never thought I'd make it that far. I've got cerebral palsy. I had ulcerative colitis. Now I have no colon. I fell down a set of stairs, so I have no spleen. I've had kidney stones, and I only have 1 kidney. There was once when I did contemplate suicide. I even got out the knife. But life is precious. Life is far too much fun. And all of a sudden, assisted suicide becomes an acceptable medical treatment. People like myself who are living with disabilities, or indeed anyone who's in a lot of pain, like I am, may in fact find that their life is cut short You know, I don't think there is any dignity in assisted suicide. None at all. There are too many good things in life to enjoy.
In 1998, I was diagnosed with AML leukemia. I had at most 3 months to live if I did not find a bone marrow transplant donor. Fortunately, my older brother Ben was a willing donor and a match. I then got a bone marrow transplant that saved my life. I went from 165 pounds down to almost 110. I was frail, thin, and in tremendous pain due to the chemotherapy. Yes, it's true that many times I thought of ending it, even right there in the hospital room if I could have. But I chose to fight on and live I did. And here I am 15 years later, working full-time, back to normal, considered cured. Life is a precious gift from God, and we have no right to decide when we want to end it.
For the past 13 years, I've lived with Friedreich's ataxia, an incurable, untreatable, disabling neurological condition. As regards assisted suicide, I'd like there to be assistance if I needed it. However, I also believe that this is my life, my decision, to be taken with the help of those closest to me. If this isn't my decision to make, whose is it? Who has a greater right to decide this for me? And what presumption, what arrogance of theirs could justify it? I won't ask permission.